The film starts off evolved through showing the lifestyle of the web international wherein anybody is completely interested in their phones. Within the midst of all this, we see a young guy Lee, who is using an internet buying website named Target. This website is a platform in which second-hand goods are traded. He texts his cope with to a female supplier, even though he doesn't individually recognize her. It seems that the man is planning to sell his old PC to that respective dealer. The scene then moves to our protagonist, Son, who is the office supervisor at a business company. She is scolding the workers as they have got messed up with their work. Due to this, Hun also gets reprimanded by her boss, who asks her to do the labor paintings. Here we study that the boss has some feelings for our heroine. Throughout lunch hour, Hun talks approximately her broken washing system with her colleague Ju, since she's presently suffering with finance. Ju recommends the Target website online. Via the online platform, Hun can buy a second-hand washing device machine at a low charge. Within the intervening time, Lee, the young man whom we saw at the beginning of the film, receives a message from that lady supplier he has been talking to. She informs him that her brother might be selecting up the computer. Moments later, a mysterious guy seems in front of Lee's door. He then stabs the bad guy multiple times within the stomach, killing him. It seems that this stranger is a serial killer who selects his sufferers using the goal website. Following this, the killer uploads the belongings of the dead guy at the Target internet site in order that he can earn cash from the one's assets. It's further found out that he extorts money from his sufferers, first of all posing as a consumer and then eventually killing them. Our heroine quickly falls prey to this demonic act. She uses the Target internet site and sees a second-hand washing system. She then messages its owner and decides to shop for the gadget. However, when the machine is established at her house, it turns out to be junk. Furious, she contacts the proprietor. However, he does not pick up the smartphone. As an end result, Hun is going to document a complaint towards that owner, assuming that he's a scammer. On the police station, Detective Na and Detective Zhu consider the case as minor. However, they promise Yen that they may, without a doubt, catch the scammer. Upon returning domestic, she thoroughly investigates the profile of the proprietor of the showering device. Inside the profile, we see the old PC belonging to Lee, who turned into murdered earlier. This means that the man who bought the showering device to Lee is the serial killer, ignorant of the owner's identity. Hun starts off evolved, telling human beings inside the comments now not to ship money to this man because he is a scammer. She also tells them that she has filed a file against him. In the meantime, the serial killer becomes aware of Hun's deeds. It seems that he's ready with a whole hacking machine, because of which he can retrieve every online detail of Hyen. The following day on the office, Hyen notices that her boss's tone of communication is exactly like that of a scammer. This makes her anticipate that he's the culprit. Later that day, she starts getting numerous scam calls. Her smartphone begins ringing continuously, and he or she additionally gets many messages from unknown people. This is going on because the serial killer has stolen Hun's details and published them on distinct websites to buy useless merchandise. To make things worse, that night, several delivery humans arrive at her door. Hun is convinced that the scammer now is aware of her deal with the following day. Whilst she heads out for the office, she leaves a word at the door mentioning that no transport person need to come to her region. In any other case, the police will capture them. Later, Hun, who believes that the scammer is crossing his line, visits the police station and that they must look into the case as soon as viable. In response, the detectives guarantee her that they're running at the research that night. Hun is going out with Doju and they get a little tipsy as she arrives at her residence. We see that the serial killer is already preserving a watch on her from afar. The subsequent day, Hun is visited by way of a mechanic who has come to test the water sprinklers. This may be very atypical due to the fact her water sprinklers had never broken down. However, she would not pay plenty attention to this and heads out for paintings. Later that afternoon, she receives a peculiar, textual content from her brother, who's all of a sudden disturbing a few money from her. Hyen then tries to name him, however his cell phone appears to be switched off. Because of this, the serial killer was posing as her brother and inquiring for money from Hyen. That night time, she hears a noise on the door, and when she goes to check, the electrical lock opens robotically. A person then all of a sudden seems in the front of her door and asks whether she is the lady he paid money to be intimate with. Hyen quick realizes that the scammer has come what may hacked her electric-powered lock and is now sending random men to her residence to be intimate. Panicked, she calls the detectives, because of which the aloof guy runs away in fear. Moments later, Hun gets a message from an unknown quantity which reads, "I'm coming to fulfill you within 5 minutes." Horrified, she loses her senses and units a timer for 5 minutes. As quickly because the timer ends, the door opens robotically once more and some other guy arrives in front of her apartment. However, before something bad can manifest, Detective Ju arrives just in time to arrest that man the next day, but it is discovered that the person had also simply come over to get intimate with Yen. He become given the deal with the aid of some unknown man. Later that nighttime, the serial killer threatens Hyen, telling her that her loss of life is nearing. He's now bored of gambling video games along with her. Terrified, Hyen at once informs the cops about it. After a radical investigation, the detectives subsequently controlled to discover the scammer's den. There are no property except for a deep freezer inside the corner. Whilst the detectives open it, they may be left in utter shock. They discover the dead frame of Lee. This means that this is actually his residence. Now it subsequently dawns upon each person that is a serious case and the suspect is a serial killer. Inside the meantime, it is found out that the person who had come to restore the water sprinklers at Hun's place changed into absolutely the killer. He had outfitted a camera in the sprinkler to maintain an eye on her at night. Hun feels that someone has entered her condo, so she examines it thoroughly, but there may be no one at her vicinity. However, herself. The following day, the serial killer follows Hyen to her domestic. When her boss comes over to go to her, she refuses to permit him in because she believes he is probably the scammer. Despite this, the boss, who seems to be under the influence of alcohol, attempts to forcefully input the condominium. Scared, Hun closes the door, injuring his hand inside the system. Later, she unearths her matters tousled in the toilet. It is as though a person has just taken a bathtub. She additionally reveals food scattered inside the kitchen, indicating that a person had just cooked here. All of a sudden, the computer turns on through itself, and on the screen it says, "These days you came home early." Seeing this, Hun is petrified, so she right away calls the detectives. Whilst they come and look into the apartment, they do no longer discover an unmarried fingerprint. This indicates that the serial killer is a department at his work. The harassment maintains because the killer calls Han tomorrow and informs her that he is privy to her financial institution info. Moments later, he withdraws all of the cash from her bank account, prompting our depressed heroine to move loopy. Meanwhile, the Detectives begin taking the case. Severely someday Detective Ju is ready outdoor Hyun's residence to try to trap the wrongdoer. All at once the killer breaks the detective's vehicle window and manages to make him unconscious. He then takes out a knife and is set to kill Detective Ju. Fortunately he is not able to accomplish that whilst he hears a few noise nearby. The killer then actions forward to Hanan's residence organized to kill her. This night on the same time Han's boss arrives at the area to express regret for his misdeeds while he sees the killer who is wearing regular garments. He thinks that Hyun is having an affair with this guy. The boss receives, quite irritated, and starts off evolved bad-mouthing him. A scuffle soon starts off evolved where the killer brutally stabs the boss and kills him by means of the time Hun returns to the condo. The killer has already hidden the dead body and entered internal oblivious. Hyun rests at the couch, and that is while she notices something. Her eyes fall at the water sprinkler whilst she sees digital camera lighting fixtures flickering internal. She then starts checking all of the sprinklers and believes that the killer may have geared up cameras everywhere in the apartment. Just while she's scanning the sprinklers she makes a scary discovery. Her heart trembles at the dead frame of her boss, which the killer had hidden in a corner. Just then the door in the back of her opens, and now the serial killer is status right behind her. He without delay assaults Hun, rendering her unconscious on the equal time. Detective Ju regains attention, and Detective Na additionally arrives at the scene. The two then observe the serial killer's automobile where Hun is stored hostage. They pass via the slim streets, but all at once Detective Na's car receives hit by a truck. As a result he gets significantly injured. It also reasons the serial killer's car to overturn regardless of getting injured. In the manner the killer manages to get away from the scene. Following the tragic twist,